All right, so last time we left off here where we have talked about the basics of the Unity editor, and we have talked about most of the components that we can see inside this screen. Now, we have missed one important part, which is the scene file and how the Unity structures look like. So let's take a look into that first, because that is important. Because what I have seen into many students is that when they're trying to, for example, copy their projects from one place to another, they don't have the idea that what this what this project is actually stored, where it is actually stored, and how it look like. So let's talk a little bit about that and talk a little bit about what a scene file is and how can we create a new scene and what does a whole complete like Unity project looks like. All right, so to do that, I'm going to right click here and go to show in Explorer, and this is my Space Shooter 2D game. And as you can see, we have a asset folder. This is a folder where we put all our like assets that we are going to use in our game. Library is basically some library that Unity automatically imports for you, and you don't touch anything in here. It is based on the project setting that you do when you started your game. Also, if we, for example, change something into our rendering settings, that will be reflected here. So library, we should not use it, or we should not touch it, because this is basically done automatically by Unity. We have logs. These are all the logs that Unity produces. There is packages. This is important one. So from Unity 2017, I think Unity came with this new idea of like adding up all the packages in a particular JSON file. So when we are adding a particular sort of functions, extra functions into our game, for example, if we want to add a enhanced sprite editor, then we might need a special package that Unity made for us. So all those built-in packages that Unity gives us can be installed through an option here, and that package has a reference which is basically stored into this JSON file. All right, so yeah, so if I open this JSON file, it looks something like this. We are not going to talk about this just yet, so don't worry about it. And we have project settings. Again, these settings are based on the settings of our project. When you started, this is a 2D game, so all the default settings are applied here. We are not going to touch that at all. And then we have some temporary file. When Unity opens it, there is a temporary file and user settings. All right, and then we have the solution file, which is basically a Visual Studio solution of this project. So if you double click on this, it will open a Visual Studio and you can get all the reference of your script. So this is basically the whole Unity project. So when you are talking about a Unity project, this is this whole thing, right? So this folder, the Space Shooter 2D, this whole folder is basically the container of the whole Unity project. If you, for example, miss the asset folder, then you're in a big problem. So remember one thing, we are going to use the asset folder a lot. We are not going to talk about any of this, so you can just forget about that just for a bit. Always remember that everything that you're trying to do inside your project should always go inside asset folder. Even if you just copy this asset folder, right, that is going to be enough. That is going to hold all the important files in your project. You can actually, these things can be regenerated by Unity engine itself, but the asset folder is the most important one, and everything that you import, I'm repeating again, should go inside asset folder. All right. Yeah, and what is a scene then? So a scene is a particular asset which is basically going to store all these things that we just edited, right? So Unity comes up with this default scene called sample scene. So when you create a new project, there is already a scene created for you, and you can edit this scene, you can save this, and when you save this scene, that is been stored as a scene file, and whenever you double click on this, all this data, all the change that you made in your project on that particular scene will be shown here. Now we can create our own scene by going to file and then new scene. All right, we're going to create a 2D game, so we're going to click on this 2D scene, and then we're going to create. All right, and then when you do this, again we have an empty scene, nothing in here. We can see the title is untitled, so we can basically now save this scene first. If you press Ctrl S, it will pop up this screen where you can save your scene. And I always prefer to keep things in particular folders. So we already have a folders called scenes, so go in there and give a name. So I'm going to name it gameplay and save. All right, so yeah, so now let's add the ship. Here we have lots of ship. We need to cut them somehow. We're going to talk about that later, but good thing is that now we can save this. And if I now go back to sample scene, you can see the changes in the sample scene is there. If I double click on my gameplay, the changes in my gameplay scenes are here. All right, all of them combines a whole project, and we're going to talk more about scenes down the road, but for now this is a good start, and now we can move on to some actual coding stuff, and we can write our first code in C#. So I'll see you in the next tutorial where we start scripting in C#, and also we're going to talk a little bit about like these game objects and how scripting and game objects basically binds together and works as a whole. All right, so I'll see you guys in the next lecture.